All right, couples. So I hope things are going well for everybody. And if they're not, I hope that we can get into something that will help you guys to shape things a little bit differently. So this past week, we're discussing in our book writing. One of the things is forgiveness, but overall, we're discussing being able to shift our mindset on how we're looking at things. And so, I mean, forgiveness is a huge mindset to have. We're going to use the scripture Ephesians 4:32 today to talk about forgiveness. I think that we can go probably to a lot of different scriptures. We'll just stick with one today. A little bit of background on Ephesians. So in Ephesians, what's happening at this point in time is that the Apostle Paul is writing this letter to Ephesians, and he is discussing with them the idea that um, they're supposed to be able to be in unity and to be one, which for us is really fitting for the idea of marriage, right? Like we're supposed to be in a place of oneness and really moving together. He's talking to the speaking to the combination of um, at that time Jews and non-Jews and how they can come together as one. And in fact, he uses the idea eventually in Ephesians, later on in Ephesians, he uses the idea of a marriage um, being what he was trying to describe. And the idea of a marriage is where or the marriage relationship is where the wife is respectful and allows the love of her husband, and then the husband is loving and giving himself up um, for his wife. And so he compared that actually to what Jesus did for the church. And so it's interesting though that, I mean, even in his description, you can find a lot of goodness about what we should be doing in relationship. And so in Ephesians 4:32, it says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." And so uh, he's asking us to and specifically what's going on there is he's talking about us being able to be like a new version of ourselves and being able to be kind and compassionate to one another and to forgive each other, which is another, it's really a mindset, right? Forgiving each other just as Christ forgave us. And so this is to me a cool opportunity for us to kind of break down some things that actually happen in our marriage. And one thing, that we kind of already discussed is that the opportunity here is the idea of what brings unity and harmony. And that's what he's discussing overall. And there's a couple of different things: kind, compassion, forgiving. Those are scenarios that he's actually discussing in in that verse. And so that's one thing that I think is that's useful. Another thing that's useful is us being able to live out our faith on a daily basis with interactions that look like that. And I think in our marriage, the more that we're able to do that, um, it changes everything, right? So if we can um, really kind of believe in that, the idea that if I can have the right mindset, if I can incorporate forgiveness and kindness, that good things are going to turn out in our marriage, right? And so it's really believing in those things. And then finally, being able to really emulate what Jesus was able to do. And I've always kind of um, grew up with the idea that that's the person that we're trying to mimic or be as close to um, in interactions as possible. And so I think those are themes that we can definitely look at. Okay. Why don't we break down each verse and see if we can grab some juice out of each one, or each section of the verse? And I'm going to break it down into three little sections. Okay. And so the first one is to be kind and compassionate to one another. And so I think we know what those words are, but what does it mean in our marriage? And I think part of kindness is us being able to be thoughtful and considerate towards what each one of us might be going through. And it's sometimes it's just the small acts of love and kindness and words of encouragement and just being a little bit supportive, sending little messages. It's sometimes just those things that are so small, like they seem like they might not even make a difference. But if you take a speck of sand, like it's nothing, but you start putting a whole lot of speck of sands together, and you can hold some water out with that kind of situation. And so us being able to believe in the little bit that we can do as far as kindness in our relationship is a big deal. What about compassion in our marriage? And that has a lot to do with us being able to understand more and empathize more with what our partner is feeling or what they're experiencing, instead of us being so embedded in what we might be experiencing. Instead, for us to have compassion for our partner means that we're able to understand a little bit more, and when we can't understand, we're able to at least empathize. And so it means that we got to be a little bit more sensitive to the needs and the struggles that each one of us might have. The second part of that verse talks about forgiving each other. And so if we were to break it down in our marriage, what does that mean? And we discussed a little bit of this in the video, um, from the previous week, but it's really us letting go, like you not trying to. In fact, in Ephesians, um, Paul discusses, instead of us trying to get revenge, for us to forgive. And that's actually what's happening. Like it is a sneaky way of, if we're not able to let go, it's a sneaky way of us trying to get revenge through a hardship or heartache or whatever that is, and it's not dismissing that, how you were treated was unfair or not right, but it is encouraging the idea that says that forgiveness is probably a whole lot, not probably, it's a whole lot bigger in our relationship for us to be able to move forward together. And so it's a big deal for us to be able to let go of what has been done to us that wasn't useful, that was hurtful, that was selfish, right? And so working on that in your heart, I think, is important. And then finally, the last part says, just as Jesus forgave you, or just as God forgave you, using or through Jesus. And so I think that this is a big deal because we can see that that has to do with a bigger picture, right? So it's a bigger picture of us being able to have um, love that's unconditional, right? Love that goes beyond whatever transgressions happen. And so forgiveness gives us a route to being able to continuously experience that love and be able to continuously give that love. And what better example than for us to be able to look at how God did it using His Son. Okay. We also talked about in our video about how Brene Brown discusses um, letting something die, and so that whole picture there, where the idea that God would allow His Son to die, and use that as a forgiveness mark, shows us some of the path for what it takes to forgive and some of the hardship that, yeah, we probably will have to go through. But the truth is, it's rooted in love, and it helps us to be able to display and interact with love. All right. So, what can you guys do to actually use what it is that we're talking about and breaking down here? And I think that's the important part, is like, can we come up with some practical things to do in our marriage that would be helpful? Well, one of the things that I think would be helpful is us being able to practice kindness. And those are the things that I listed earlier, but simple things that you can do, like sending messages, being able to just leave notes, being able to listen attentively. Those kinds of things just give you an opportunity to do daily acts of kindness. You can use words, and so words that affirm who your partner is to you and how much you love and appreciate them. So just being able to practice kindness, put that on your list. And then how do we cultivate compassion in our relationship? It's things like active listening and empathy that we started to describe earlier that really give us a different chance to um, speak to another in different ways and feel more connected because of the listening and the feeling like we're being seen experience helps us to cultivate compassion in our relationship, and then that becomes the vibe of our relationship, right? And then finally, what if we can create a culture of embracing forgiveness? The hope is that we don't mistreat each other, but the truth is we are human, and in a mood or in a moment, like, we can truly do something to each other that is just um, not useful, hurtful, selfish, whatever it is. But us being able to, um, let go of what's gone on and see that our partner is not vicious, their heart's good, and then trying to really look to reconcile whatever is going on as much as possible. I think that is a culture that we want in our relationship. So those three things: being able to do some daily acts of kindness and affirmation, and then being able to cultivate compassion by actively listening and having empathy for one another, and then being able to embrace each other, or embrace forgiveness with each other by letting go and reconciling whenever it's time. Okay. So, what are some ways that you can show kindness to each other daily? And these are questions that I think these four questions you guys can put down and then review them later. And then you want to ask yourselves, how can we be more compassionate towards each other? Um, like, what do I need to do to be more compassionate towards my partner's feelings? And then, what are some challenges that we face in forgiving each other? Like, what makes it difficult and how can we overcome them? And then finally, can you share a time when forgiveness strengthened our relationship? And you guys will be talking about this to each other. How did it change our dynamic? Um, so I think those are huge questions. They also could be fun for you guys to be able to discuss, but they're also growing for you guys to be able to discuss. Okay. What I would ask you guys to do is spend time in prayer when it comes time to forgiveness. Like, what makes it difficult? And that's worth growing a relationship around, and seeking scripture about and being able to really understand more about what's going on with you that makes it a struggle for you, and how can I get better at it, right? So I think we're on our way to being able to embrace forgiveness if we can just follow some of that scripture and spend some time together and being able to do a little bit more discovery. All right, you guys, we'll talk to you soon.